So, April 30th, 1975. It's a day the world watched as Saigon, the capital of South Vietnam, just fell to North Vietnamese forces. But here's the thing. That historic day wasn't just the end of a long, brutal war. It was really the beginning of a whole new and very turbulent chapter for millions of people. So today we're going to dig into the huge consequences of that day and explore what came after the fall.
You know, when you think about a conflict that spans decades, it often boils down to one single iconic image, doesn't it? Well, for the Vietnam War, it's this one. Absolute chaos, desperation, and a helicopter just teetering on a rooftop during that final American evacuation. But behind this famous photograph is a much, much bigger story of a city and really an entire country at its absolute breaking point.
Okay, so let's jump right into the thick of it. Section 1. The last 48 hours in Saigon.
And the thing that's just staggering is how fast this all went down. I mean, the final push started with rockets hitting Saigon for the first time in over 3 years, completely shattering any sense of safety the city had left. Then bombs hit the main airbase, Ten Son Nhut, cutting off the primary escape route. That's what kicked off Operation Frequent Wind, that frantic helicopter evacuation. And just hours later, North Vietnamese tanks were literally crashing through the gates of the presidential palace.
And this is the moment it all ended. At 11:30 in the morning, that flag went up. The South Vietnamese president went on the radio and announced an unconditional surrender. And just like that, after decades of fighting that tore a nation in two, the Vietnam War was over.
So the big question is, how on earth did it all unravel so quickly? I mean, a whole country just collapsing in a matter of weeks. To get that, we have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. So our next section, the final offensive.
Just look at this timeline. The pace it's just breathtaking. The North Vietnamese offensive starts on March 10th, and from there it's like a domino effect. Major cities fall one after another, Hue, then Da Nang. Then you have the South Vietnamese president, Theo, on TV, in tears, blaming the United States for abandoning his country. 9 days after he resigns, Saigon is gone. This whole thing caught almost everyone, including world leaders, completely by surprise.
And it wasn't just the average person who was shocked. We're talking about seasoned world leaders. Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew put it perfectly. He said his reaction was one of astonishment and alarm. This wasn't just a military loss. It felt like a geopolitical earthquake, and you could feel the shockwaves spreading across Southeast Asia almost instantly.
And all of this, of course, brings us to the human story. For hundreds of thousands of people, the end of the fighting wasn't an end to the suffering, not by a long shot. For so many, it was the start of something just as terrifying. This was the Great Exodus.
So you remember that iconic helicopter photo? That was part of Operation Frequent Wind. It managed to evacuate about 7,000 people. Now, at the time, that was the largest helicopter evacuation in history. A massive, massive logistical effort. But as you're about to see, it was barely a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, see? That 7,000 was nothing compared to what came next. In the years after the fall, we're talking about an estimated 2 million people who fled Vietnam, often in these tiny, rickety, dangerously overcrowded boats. They became known to the world as the Boat People, and their story sparked one of the biggest refugee crises of the entire 20th century.
So you have to ask, right? Why? Why would 2 million people risk absolutely everything to leave their homes on a tiny boat? Well, for those who stayed, especially anyone tied to the old government, a really grim fate was waiting for many of them. About 1 million soldiers, police officers, and civil servants were sent to what the new government called re-education camps.
Okay, so these re-education camps, that's a pretty soft name for what they actually were. Let's be clear, we're talking about a massive network of prison camps, sometimes called the bamboo gulag. You were subjected to forced labor, political brainwashing, starvation, disease, often for years on end with no trial. That very real threat is what drove so many people into the sea.
But the impact here wasn't just about individuals or even a single country. The fall of Saigon literally redrew the political map of the entire region. This brings us to our next section, a new world order.
And here's that name again, Lee Kuan Yew, with another incredibly sharp take. He was worried that a unified Vietnam, backed by the Soviets, would become this new, unpredictable powerhouse, an Asian Yugoslavia, as he put it. And that idea, it terrified its neighbors.
And that fear lit a fire under everyone. Suddenly, there's this frantic scramble to realign. ASEAN, the group of Southeast Asian nations, holds its first ever Leaders Summit. You have countries like Thailand and the Philippines rushing to buddy up with China to find a new counterweight. The old domino theory was being thrown out the window. The whole board was being reset, and everyone was trying to figure out the new rules.
So what you start to see is that one single day, one single event can mean completely different things to different people. Which leads us to our final and maybe most important question. Was it Black April or was it Reunification Day?
And this right here just lays it all out, plain and simple. In Vietnam today, April 30th, is a public holiday. It's called Reunification Day, a celebration of national unity and victory. But for the millions of people in the Vietnamese diaspora, the refugees and their families all over the world, it's known as Black April, a solemn day of mourning for the country they lost. Two names for one day, capturing two totally different worlds of memory.
And the wild thing is, all of these truths exist at the exact same time. For the government in Hanoi, a historic triumph. For the people who fled, a profound tragedy. And for the countries next door, it was a 5-alarm fire that changed their politics forever. All true, all at once.
So in the end, it's pretty clear, right? The fall of Saigon wasn't an end point. Not at all. It was a starting line for new journeys, for new conflicts, and for the creation of the new nations we see in Southeast Asia today. And that really leaves us with one last thing to think about. When a single event can hold so many different, powerful, and competing truths, we really have to ask ourselves, when we talk about this history, whose story are we telling? And maybe more importantly, whose story gets forgotten?